We wanted to provide you with an exercise that offered realistic challenges or small hurdles that come up when you are trying to download data from a public resource and make some moves with it in a spreadsheet. We're going to be using Google Sheets. I've laid out this multi-step challenge, and we're going to tackle it together step by step. The first step is to head to the Fred economic database and type in CPI LFESL into the search bar. There are various kinds of inflation, and by no means do we expect you to be an inflation expert. So we told you what you needed to put in. So this is headline CPI, and CPI is what economists use to calculate the inflation rate. Step 2 was to change the period to January 1st, 2007 through December 31st, 2013, but there's this hint that Fred really doesn't supply us with December 31st, 2013. We have to make a small modification. Let's go in. Here is our time frame. We will start our analysis period at 2007, January. And then when we try to go to December 31st, 2013, there we go, we're actually only taken through December 1st, 2013. The small variation that we make is we just modify the data by 1 day. This is practical stuff that you're going to run into all the time. Somebody's going to ask you, hey, can you get me XYZ data? And well, the answer is no, I can't get you XYZ data, but I can get you really close. Just make a note of it and then report back, oh, I was able to get you to January 1st, 2014. I don't think that the person who requested the data is going to care. Step 3, click Edit Graph. Change the units from index to compounded annual rate of change. As I mentioned, what you're looking at is not actually inflation, which we need in order to calculate the misery index. But what you are given here is the CPI. And so the way that we make that modification is by changing from the index value to the compounded annual rate of change. And I'm going to press that. And now all of a sudden, my values look different. It's not like that upward increasing line. It looks like it's bounded sort of between, call it -1.5 and call it 3.25, 3.5. But this is much more like an inflation rate, and certainly the inflation rates that we were encountering over that time period. Step 4, download the CSV, the comma space value format sheet for this modified data series. Download and download in CSV. Excellent. Step 5. Next, download the CSV file that reports unemployment rate for the period January 1st, 2007 through December 31st, 2013. Probably we're going to need to modify those dates as well. You will not need to modify the units as the unemployment rate is already reported as a percentage. We've got a percentage here now, and what we're going to do, head up to Search Fred and put unemployment rate. Once again, let's put in that time period, 2007, January, and our quick fix of January 2014. No modification to the graph. We don't need to work with this edit graph. We can just download again as a CSV. Step 6, open Google Sheets and create a new file. Don't name it quite yet. Sheets.google. And I'm just going to click blank. Import each of the 2 CSV files you downloaded. You're just going to want to follow me here. Something happens kind of like what you might expect on the first file that we import, but maybe not quite on the second. So we have to change some things up. So we'll go here, we'll import, we'll go to upload, we're going to browse in the downloads, and this was the CPI data series. We will import the data, and things work just the way that we think they will. There's a date column and there's the CPI column. Notice, and this is going to come to sort of bite us in the rear, is the CPI column is not reported as like 0.0292, as in, 2.92%, but the actual number 2.92164, which if we were to, for instance, turn this into a percentage, it's 292.16%. So that's going to be something that we have to grapple with in a little bit. We've imported this first part, and now we want to go and import the second data series, the unemployment data series, because we want to add inflation to unemployment in order to generate our misery index. But something's going to happen, and this is just kind of part and parcel of working with real life data. We press open, and it says import data, and we're kind of hoping, does it populate as a new worksheet, or does it come right in to our values? As it turns out, none of the above. We're just left with this data series, even though we've already had an upload. We need to go to File, and we need to open the file and see what we have. And there's the unemployment rate. So we'll open that up, and it will populate as its own sheet. Herein lies our problem. We want to calculate a misery index that is the sum of both sheets, but they're resting on separate sheets. We're going to need to transport the data from the unemployment rate over to the inflation. I am a Mac user, so I'm going to press Command A. I could have just as easily pressed Control A if I was a PC user. And then I'm going to copy paste the data series over to the unemployment rate. I'm going to rest my cursor right there at C1, and then I'm going to paste the series. Now we have all of the data appearing on one series. There's a little bit of flexibility in terms of what I could do. What I would like to do, now that I have all the data, I am going to name the spreadsheet. It's optional, but I'm going to call it Misery Index. Notice that the dates line up. That's what we want to see, but we probably don't need both date columns. I'm going to head on up to this column C. There's a drop-down arrow, and I'm just going to say delete column. I've got, for the month of January 2007, February 2007, both the unemployment rate and the inflation rate. We want to add these two together to create a misery index. There are a couple ways that you could go about it. So I'm going to press equals, and then I'm going to put 0.01 or 1% of, and then times. I'm going to add the two data series, so C2 plus B2. What that does is it now reports the sum of these, but because I multiplied each of them by 0.01 beforehand, it's now reporting as a true percent, 7.5%. You get the idea. This is very helpful. Google Sheets comes along and says, hey, can we suggest an autofill where we're going to do the same thing all the way down the column? Normally, that is exactly what I would do. In this particular case, I am not going to do it that way because I just want to refresh with you the other kind of longer way to do it. So I'm going to press the X box. All I need to do is click on my data value and drag. And just for this illustration, I'm going to drag down only there a few cells, and automatically instead of taking 1% of C2 plus B2, etc., now it goes on down the line. To speed along the process, I can double click on that bottom right circle, and it will complete all the way down the column for all of the data that I have. Once it runs out of data values, then the pattern stops. Well, this is my misery index. I am a believer in prettying things up, making them look nice. For our misery index, I'm going to head up to the top of the column, and I am going to center these. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over and turn these into a percentage. 7.52, we could mess around with the decimals. We could take the decimals down, and that would be perfectly defensible. We could make the decimals go out so that there's more precision. That is how to create a misery index. And you had to jump through some hoops and make some decisions. You had to change the dates. You had to change the index values. It's a relatively simple exercise, but it's illustrative of the kinds of things that you very much do have to encounter when you're working with real data. Congratulations.